Let us understand the main workhorse model of macroeconomics, which is the model of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So let's begin with aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is nothing but a relationship between uh, output GDP and aggregate level of prices. Now, if you would know from the micro version, whereby we were thinking of quantity of, say oranges and price of oranges, we derived this demand curve, which was downward sloping, which said that when prices are higher, people would want to buy less of the product, and vice versa. When it's lower, people would want to buy more of the product. And But this is as far as a particular product is concerned, say oranges. Now we are interested at aggregating all the products together. So when you aggregate apples and oranges and shoes and jackets and airline and computers and laptops and internet services, what do we get? We get what is called GDP, or output. uh, and then we are not just talking of the price of one particular product. Oranges is what we are referring to, but the price of all the products together. This can be seen as GDP deflator, which is reflecting the price of all products in that we produce in a country in a given period of time. And so here too, the demand is downward sloping. So when prices are higher, aggregate demand is going to be lower, and vice versa. But the reasons why this demand is downward sloping is interestingly different than the micro version, which comes from just the consumer behavior. So there are three main channels or reasons or effects through which the aggregate demand can be seen to be sloping downward. Let's think about each of them. So if you say price when it's lower, right, when things are cheaper, people tend to feel empowered in terms of they can buy more. The every dollar that you carry in your wallet can buy more because things are now cheaper, and that means that the purchasing power of money is higher, and hence people would consume, or higher consumption spending would lead to higher demand for the cars or the shoes and the jackets and the like. So this is what is called the wealth effect. All of a sudden we feel that we are more wealthier because the prices are lower, and so you notice that price lower, demand is higher. The second channel through which the reason why aggregate demand is downward sloping is what is called as the interest rate effect. Now interest rate effect happens through so this wealth effect happens to consumption, interest rate effect happens through investments. So you take the same situation. So when prices are lower, right, you do not need as much money to hold to buy the product. You don't have to carry as much money in your checking account, and so on and so forth. And so the demand for money is lower, right? And because people would demand less money in their checking accounts and their wallets, the price of money would be low, right? If demand for any product is down, the price of that product is down. So if the product is money, then the price of money is interest rate. So if you need money, you need to borrow, and for which you have to pay interest rate, right? And so when demand for money is lower, interest rates will have a downward pressure, and interest rate and investments are inversely related, right? When the loan rates go down, the businesses find it more lucrative to undertake expansion activities. So they would invest more money in their business, and hence the demand for those product that comes from businesses will be higher, right? So, and again here you can see when price goes down, the demand is higher. But now the demand is higher because of some other channel or other reason, which is the channel through investments or interest rate effects. The third channel is through exchange rate effects, and that happens through the net export. Exchange rate name would suggest that it is going to happen through the world interaction with the domestic country. And so if we think about United States and say when price of things in US is cheap, we would end up exporting more, and as a result, people in the world would want more product from us because things are more cheaper. am not touching on the exchange rate appreciation depreciation idea right now, but it works through the channel from here to here. But you get the sense that when things are cheaper in the United States, we can export more, and that means we would end up producing more, right? So there is demand for our US products will be higher, and that will be reflected in higher GDP. So here again, when prices are lower, demand is higher, and so aggregate demand is a downward sloping line, right? So these are the reasons why aggregate demand is downward sloping. Notice that it is very different from the micro version of why the demand is downward sloping. Now, thinking about what are the factors or forces or determinants that will shift aggregate demand, right? So what are the forces that will move this aggregate demand from AD0 to AD1, which is more demand shifting right, or it will mean AD0 to AD1 but shifting left, which means less demand, right? What are these forces? Now, of course, aggregate demand is going to be demand for things that we are producing, right? And who are the players in the economy or economic agents in the economy who would want these products or things that we are producing? So if you recollect from the circular flow, we have four economic agents, economic players, whatever is the term you want to use, consumers, businesses, government, and rest of the world who wants that laptop that we produce, right? So we the consumers can buy this laptop, or the businesses may need that laptop for running their business, or the government may need the laptop to run the income tax department, or someone in Germany may need that laptop from Best Buy. So there are four players that exerts or that uh, demands goods and services. And if the question is what affects aggregate demand, the answer is straightforward. Whatever affects C, I, G, and NX is what is going to move aggregate demand, right? So when C changes, or I changes, or G changes, or NX changes, aggregate demand will change, because aggregate demand is a sum composite of C, I, G, and NX, right? So then one has to think about, okay, what moves consumers, right? Or what affects consumption spending? This goes back to our understanding of consumption, where wealth, consumers' confidence, expectations, debt, taxes, these are all the things that affects our spending for, or our demand for cars or jackets or vacation trips or and things like that. As far as businesses are concerned, businesses have to weigh in risks. What are they expecting the future to be interest rate, because they have to finance their business through business loans, and the ability to fund that business through loans is directly kind of linked, inversely linked to be precise, with interest rate, and hence investments will be driven by interest rates as well. So if interest rate changes, investment change. This is an important variable for a specific reason. I'll talk in just a bit. The third force is, of course, the government spending. The US Congress, as I said, may need to update their income tax department, and they may need additional 100 computers from HP, and that's government spending. And then the rest of the world, NX. So the economic conditions in China or Europe and Asia and things like that tend to affect our exports, and for that matter even in imports, and that then affects our aggregate demand, right? In all these factors, there are two forces which to particular needs particular attention. This is a policy variable, so a policy can change this variable. This is also a policy variable. This is a monetary policy variable. This is a fiscal policy variable. All right, and these two policy variables, notice that work through aggregate demand, right? And so when you change monetary policy stand, or when you change fiscal policy stand, the idea is to affect aggregate demand, either greater or lower, typically to increase, but you can have other situation as well.